My name's Hamish Norbrook and I work here at the BBC on the Learning English website.
My name is David Eastman and I'm a consultant, teacher trainer and teacher, and I've been involved with computers in language learning for the last 20 years.
Well, my name is Dave Sperling and I'm the founder and creator of a website for ESL, EFL students called Dave's ESL Cafe.
My name is Mike Bradley. I've been a teacher in Japan for about 15 and a half years, and I started using the internet about 10 years ago.
My name's Edwina Hughes. I've been a consultant and teacher for 15 years, and I've been using the internet for the last decade.
My name's Donna Arbuthnot. I'm an English language teacher. I've been teaching for 3 years and I've been using the internet for 5 years.
Hello, I'm Callum Robertson and this is Knowledge on the Net. Those were a few of the people, experts, specialists and teachers who we'll be hearing from later in the programme. In the series, we'll be looking at the internet and how it can be used by teachers of English as a tool for their own development and as a resource for classroom teaching. We'll be looking at the advantages of using the web, covering some of the problems and providing a few suggestions for dealing with those difficulties. In today's programme, we'll take a brief look at the history of the internet and how it has come to be used as a resource for teaching and learning. We'll find out what there is out there on the web for teachers and why it's worth your while using the net for you and your students.
I first heard about the internet through a cousin of mine who's an American. This was in the early 1990s, and he came over to Britain, stayed with an aunt, and asked if he could unplug her phone and plug his computer into her phone wire. Now, she'd never heard of anybody doing anything like this, and I have to say was slightly affronted at the thought of her phone being relegated to second place in favour of this black box computer. But it worked, and he was able to retrieve his emails.
That was BBC English's internet pioneer Hamish Norbrook describing his first experience of the internet. Like many of us, Hamish was introduced to the net in the early 1990s, but it has been around for a little while longer. The internet was originally developed in the United States during the 1960s as a way to guarantee the continued flow of information in the event of a nuclear war. It had been feared that many communication centres could be destroyed, so a system was developed that wasn't centralised and didn't depend on single computers holding all the information. The system was developed in cooperation with a number of universities and colleges, who also saw it as a way of publishing articles for the academic community. By the early 1970s, what had started as an essential defence system had become an electronic post office. However, it wasn't until the 1990s that the internet had a face that was accessible and friendly to use for the general public. That friendly face was the World Wide Web. The web gave users access to content on the internet through a piece of software called a browser. As important as the browser was the technology of hyperlinking, which allows users to click on a link and be taken to another page. These, combined with the rapid growth in personal computer ownership, has seen the internet become perhaps the most important global communication tool. The internet now has information on just about every topic you could imagine. So it was only natural that it would be of interest to teachers. But can it offer more than traditional computer-based activities? Expert in computer-assisted language learning, David Eastman, joined me by phone to describe the development of the use of computers in the teaching environment.
People have been using computers for language learning since the mid-1960s, I suppose, but it's only really since 1982, 1983, when personal computers started to become cheaper, that computer-assisted language learning has taken off in a major way. For the first few years in the early 80s, computers were just used for essentially playing games, manipulating words, manipulating sentences, because there was relatively little at that time that a computer could do other than display text on the screen. In the mid-80s, people started to word process. Towards the end of the 80s and the beginning of the 90s, it became possible to use multimedia on PCs. But the one thing that people couldn't do with these PCs was communicate. And because language teaching is the business of communication, a lot of teachers found that computers were not for them. They were technical things, they were things for students to play games with, but because they couldn't be used for communication, they weren't quite what teachers wanted. In the early 90s, when the internet and particularly the World Wide Web became available quite easily to a lot of teachers, teachers began to get very excited because for the first time a lot of them could see the relevance of using computers in the language classroom.
Computers have long been used for language teaching, but before the web, they were limited in what they could do. The web has improved on this by providing the ability to communicate and interact. David Eastman sees this communication element of the web as vital, and this view is mirrored by Hamish Norbrook.
Why should teachers use the web? Well, when the BBC started getting involved in using the web, there was a conference arranged on the radio side with American broadcasters, and they came up with a very nice definition. They said that the web is about information, but it's also about communication.
The web is about communication and information. But what does that mean in practical terms for the teacher? Well, to begin with, it's a place where you can find many authentic materials in one place. Here's David Eastman again.
For the teacher who's just for the first time got access to the internet, there really is an extraordinary range of materials available. It's hard to know really where to start because virtually everything that's available in the real world, it seems to be, is available these days on the World Wide Web. There are museum sites, and it does seem that most museums in the world now have got their sites on the World Wide Web. Thousands and thousands of newspapers, books, electronic books, old books, particularly books which are out of copyright, are readily available. So there's a whole range of authentic materials that are available, but in addition to those, there's a large and increasing number of sites which are specifically for English language teachers. Some of these are sites produced by publishers, others by individual teachers, and others by organizations such as the British Council and the BBC, of course.
So, as well as containing authentic, up-to-date materials from sources such as newspapers and magazines, there are also a large number of sites specifically for teachers and learners of English. One of the best known of these is Dave's ESL Cafe. I was joined on the phone from California by its founder, Dave Sperling.
I think that teachers will find the internet incredibly useful for, number one, just resources for the classroom. It's an incredible library of ideas and lesson plans. Another great way for teachers to benefit from the internet is to be able to meet and to communicate with other teachers from around the world. And I think that this is incredibly powerful, especially in terms of being able to come up with ideas to use in the classroom. As an example, I have a section of my site called the Idea Cookbook, and it's just crammed with thousands and thousands of teaching ideas that teachers have added to this cookbook over the last 6 or 7 years. And I've learned so much from that section of my website, and I've taken so many ideas and I've used them for my classes, and I have to say that I became a better teacher from using that section of my website.
The web is a place where you can find information for your classes, but also ideas on how to teach them. You're listening to Knowledge on the Net from the BBC World Service. We've heard from experts on what the web has to offer. Let's now hear the thoughts of some teachers who can tell us why they use the net. Here's Mike Bradley, an English teacher, speaking on the phone from Japan.
The World Wide Web's opened up a whole new world. It allows me to improve my teaching through doing courses, learning about English, and I've also found lots of facilities where I can go to a website, download flashcards or worksheets, and get a lot of really good information that I can use in my classes. But the biggest thing I find is it keeps me in contact with English. I am a native speaker of English, but I often find, as I've been here in Japan for getting on for nearly 20 years, I have now found that when I'm hearing people speak English that would have sounded strange 10, 20 years ago, I now accept it as normal English. So one of the things I can do by listening to the radio over the internet, which gives excellent reception, I can listen to programs and keep up to date with the English as it's used today. I thoroughly recommend using the internet for anybody.
If you're living outside of an English-speaking country, then the net is an excellent place to keep up to date with your English. Even native speakers can have difficulties knowing if something is correct or not, and the web is a good place to check. On some sites, as Mike says, you can even hear radio programs without having to worry about interference. Let's hear from another teacher now, Edwina Hughes.
I find the internet is an extremely user-friendly resource. One of its great advantages is that it's immediate. So where it takes maybe 2 hours to go to a library and find the appropriate book, on the internet you can do it with the flick of a switch. It's also an excellent complement to your other teaching materials. For example, most sites are updated on a very regular basis, this probably daily or weekly. This enables you to relate to current publications such as daily newspapers and magazines. This, therefore, helps students to relate more immediately to the teaching that you're doing. They are more interested, their attention is grabbed, and they will learn more efficiently.
Having access to the internet is like having a library and newsagents on your desktop. It can save you time when preparing materials, and by using it, you can make sure that all your resources are up to date, which is motivating for students. In this program, we've discovered that the net has a lot to offer the teacher. There are authentic resources and materials, places where you can find prepared lesson plans, ideas and worksheets, and places where you can share your ideas and thoughts with other teachers around the world. In the program next time, we'll be looking at ways of searching the net, so you can find what you're looking for amongst the millions of pages of information out there. To close today, one final recommendation from a teacher who talks about the net and a very important group of people, the students. Here's Donna Arbuthnot.
You should definitely use the internet. I think the primary reason is because the students love it. It's a real motivator, and they really like it. They like using it, and it's interactive. And it brings a lot to your teaching because it makes it more creative, and you become interested, you become more interested. If you're interested, the students are interested, and that's a good reason.